Hi, welcome to the bathtub. It is I, the old masturbator, and we're doing one of our episodes. This is called "It's the Pringles of Literature." You never knew you wanted one of these until we started giving them to you. Now you can't stop getting them. You have to have them all the time. It's vintage, paperback, SF, Hodgepodge. Not a roundabout. Don't confuse it with your roundabout, or your Hodgepodge will get all screwed up. And this, so it's basically a bunch of old SF paperbacks, because I used to read this stuff when I was about 16, and I'm kind of going back through my second adolescence. We got our clear crystal mountain water from our new fridge. We got a brand new fridge with proper ice making and everything. And this episode is brought to you by 3 paragraphs in the life of Bob Johnson. Remember, if it's not 3 paragraphs, it's not Bob Johnson. I'm going to put a link to this is the first volume, was written during the first Trump administration, and we're working on the second volume now, because by golly, there's a second Trump administration, so we're going to find our way through it with Bob, and I'll put a little link to my Substack, the latest Substack issue. We're doing one a day, 3 paragraphs a day about Bob Johnson. What else is there to say? There's not much. We're going to go right into this. This is also going to include the new ever-popular elimination round. We're doing an elimination round as I get older. There's too many books. I sell books. I buy more. I'm trying to eliminate books, and we're gonna see if we can eliminate some books on the shelf in this elimination round. Okay, let's start with this. I really enjoyed most of the books. I really enjoy all these books. I wouldn't read them otherwise, because I'd stop reading them. This is Great Short Novels of Science Fiction, edited by Robert Silverberg. I mean, I love the old Ballantine books. Even if I didn't read them, I would love those books. I had this since I was in this. Must be like 19. What year did he do this? 1970, and that's really with the heyday of when I was buying lots of science fiction and paperbacks. And I would go to the drugstore and get whatever Ballantine books came out, and Berkeley books always look cool. Robert Silverberg, everyone knows him, is a wonderful short story writer. One of the best short story writers American. The past century. He wrote wonderful short stories, lots of great short stories, almost all science fiction. He wrote lots of novels, some of which are pretty good. I have more mixed feelings about his novels, but I do love his short stories. He's written dozens and dozens of great stories. He was also an excellent editor. He and Harlan Ellison seem to have been two of the better. There were lots of good editors of science fiction in the 60s and 70s and the 50s. And he did a lot of books. He did a series called Alpha, the Alpha series for Ballantine paperbacks, and he did this great short novels, which I have never read. I've had it for decades, and I never got around to reading it. And it's just such a beautiful book. It cheers me up just to read these books. This has got, short novels. Short novels are kind of it's like the perfect zone for science fiction. Science fiction's best stuff is in short stories, and then the short novel. It gives them time to kind of build this kind of world, and then not get too carried away by all the plot complications and all the plotting of these futuristic societies sometimes fall apart in science fiction writers. And the short novel seems perfect. This has got some great novellas in it. And except with one exception, I have not read any of them. Go through it very quickly. A. Bertram Chandler, a writer I've never really read. He writes a lot of space opera, Star Trek sounding like adventures. I've read a little bit, never got too much into them. His first novella is called Giant Killer, which is about this sort of tribal culture and some planet. I won't tell you that. I won't give you the reader cheater. I won't give you the spoiler. But there is a spoiler secret that you find out at the end of the book. You don't need to know this. Anyway, all these kind of violent societies and how this one guy becomes powerful in society, and they fight the giants, and the giants are these giant human beings who they have to kill. Really good read. All of these were good reads. 2 Dooms by C.M. Kornbluth. Okay, we're big C.M. Kornbluth fans here. You know that. And C.M. Kornbluth died too young, and he was in some ways writing his best work right near just as he died. He died very young, in his 30s. And he writes, this is a story about what would have happened if the Nazis won the war. It's called 2 Dooms. And it's an interesting story. It's very well written. It's one of his best written books, stories. And his picture of this nightmarish Nazi world where they've taken over America. It sounds a lot like Philip K. Dick's Man in the High Castle, which was written probably later than this. And I don't know. I was going to read a little bit of it, but it's kind of hard to read sections of this, except he's dealing with race scientists, and And at the end of the story, there's a kind of a weird, I'll give you a little spoiler alert, that's sort of written in a way to warn people about what would have happened if the Japanese and the Germans had won the war. And it's almost as if it's right. It's written and almost set up as a excuse for the Hiroshima bombing, which kind of threw me at the end. I felt like I was being led to accept that conclusion. But anyway, it was still a very good story. Telek, Jack Vance. I'm not going to be able to read passages. There's too many. Good novella by Vance. We're big fans of Vance here. Not my favorite, but about telekinetic society, people who can move things and move themselves from another race or another class, and certain political effects on this culture. It's a good story. I was really enjoyed Second Game. All the novellas in here by writers I didn't know that well, Catherine McLean and Charles V. de Vet, which was really an interesting story about this sort of, again, it's a huge galaxy-spanning adventure out of a John Campbell magazine, and how this one emissary dealing with this powerful race and a very complex race tries to understand them and prevent them from taking over the universe. Beyond Bedlam I have never read Beyond Bedlam by Wyman Gwynn. He was a writer who came out in the 50s, and he developed a lot of fans for this handful of short novels he wrote. And Beyond Bedlam's the most famous. It's about a future society which is in which everybody's schizophrenic, multiphasic would be the term now. They're multiple personalities, and everyone has two personalities in their head. And the way the culture evens out these two different personalities that can come out 5 days at a time out of an individual person. I did a lot of research into multiphasic personalities when I worked on a movie about it years ago, and it's kind of amazing that in the 50s he's kind of ahead of the game on many of the issues that come up with this type of personality, and the way, particularly about the way their faces change. The faces change on people who have multiple personalities. Some people don't believe it exists. I do believe it exists. Beyond Bedlam, amazing story. Finally, The Graveyard Heart, the great Roger Zelazny. I've read this several times over my life. I really love Roger Zelazny, and especially his early stuff. The prose is really, really good. And it's about immortals, people who are so wealthy they can freeze them. They can pay to freeze themselves. And they come out for one night, I think every Christmas, and have a party, and then they go back to sleep, and they can live on into the future. I'm going to read just one paragraph. His prose is wonderful. I'm going to read just the opening few paragraphs, just to give you a little flavor of the great Roger Zelazny. This is from the 60s. The Graveyard Heart. They were dancing. At the party of the century, the party of the millennium, and the party of parties. Really, as well as calendar-wise. And he wanted to crush her, to tear her to pieces. Moore did not really see the pavilion through which they moved, nor regard the 100 faceless shadows that glided about them. He did not take particular note of the swimming globes of colored light that followed above and behind them. He felt these things, but he did not necessarily sniff wilderness in that evergreen relic of Christmas past, turning on its bright pedestal in the center of the room, shedding its fireproofed needles and traditions these 6 days after the fact. This is some futuristic Christmas party. Really, really well-written story. It still holds up. It's still a great read. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm reading it again. Vampire Tapestry. Vampire Tapestry. This came up. I forget where this came up. Oh, I know. We talked about it in New Bapalula, and it has been reissued as a classic of science fiction. And a few people told me how much they liked it, and our alternate ego in England, the old outlaw, the old book outlaw. He also said he loved this book. I don't remember. I thought I'd read Suzy McKee Charnas. This book came out in 1980. But I always confuse her with Suzette Hayden Elgin, who also came out during my big period of reading a lot of SF. I was intrigued enough to pick it up. It's a sort of science fiction version of what a vampire would be. And it's an anthropological science. It talks about what kind of genetic and behavioral traits would a vampire possess, and how would they live, and his vampire, and how they would really live. And of course all this stuff about stakes through the heart and all that is just nonsense. And it's about a guy who's an academic the first two novellas. It's told in 4 novellas. The first 2 novellas are the best. The first one is where he's an academic, and one of his one of the students, or one of the women that works in his office, she's a cleaning lady, I think. She starts to recognize him, and he's very kind of attractive to many of the women, and her experience with this guy. And then at the end of that story, something happens to him, and he runs off. And the second story is about him being stolen from an emergency room in a hospital by some weird characters, Satanists, cultists, strange characters. The first 2 stories are really interesting, not just because of the way she describes the vampire, but because of the narrative point of view. The first one is about a woman who's from South Africa, who's a racist, basically. And she's looking at all the blacks on the campus and everybody in the campus. It's kind of like, this world's going the wrong direction. And she's still an interesting character, even though she's clearly a racist. And the second novella is about a young boy who's 14 or 15. He's having trouble with his parents, and he's staying with his uncle. And it's about his family, his broken family, and his difficulties of finding his own friends and his own life, while this vampire is being kept in a cage in his uncle's house. The last 2 novellas I didn't like as much, but it's a very interesting vampire novel, The Vampire Tapestry. It's just been reissued, but of course we prefer the old. I had to go get the old cool pocket books edition from 1980. Frederik Pohl. We're going to do these very quickly. Frederik Pohl, Man Plus. I become a late life Frederik Pohl fan. I really liked his work with C.M. Kornbluth, and I've read some of his novels, but in the past 6 or 8 years, I've read several Pohl novels, which I enjoyed a lot. I read Gateway, and we talked about Age of the Pussyfoot. And I read Man Plus, which is about kind of cybernetic engineering of a man so he's capable of surviving on Mars. Cheers. I thought I find most science fiction novels and a lot of genre fiction, the first half I'm much more intrigued than the second half. But this carried me pretty much 2/3, 3/4 of the way through the book, about this man's adaptations and what does to his family, and how he's physically adapted, what happens to him as a creature as he becomes half machine and starts seeing his body being transferred. Anyway, it's cool book. Even if it wasn't a good book, it's a cool looking one. Finally, a writer I never read as a kid. So for some reason, I feel like there's a certain point in our life where these writers wrote all these books and they were pretty good, and someone should still read them. So I sometimes feel it's like my responsibility. I never got around to reading Keith Laumer. He wrote, every time I went to the drugstore for about 3 years, Keith Laumer had a new novel out, and they were usually from really cool publishers. So all those cool, I always forget his name, the artist who did this. You guys will know who it is. I have a whole book of his work. The kind of surrealistic science fiction covers he did. Is Retief's War. He's best known for a series about an intergalactic emissary named Retief. Anyway, I read Worlds of the Imperium and The Other Side of Time in the past few weeks. This is considered the SF Encyclopedia, which is one of our touchstones here at the Bathtub. In that, John Clute says that this is probably his most interesting series. It's pretty interesting. It's about a time. It's about alternate realities, alternate time streams, and in some of the time streams, some people it's almost like what's that called? When it's backward punk, it's steampunk. They call it steampunk. There's a bit of steampunk in it, even though these would come out in the 60s, where somehow in the 1800s, a couple of Italian scientists created a machine that allowed you to travel to the different time streams. So people don't go into outer space; they go from other time streams. Anyway, I found them pretty interesting. Worlds of the Imperium is about a guy that he's kind of an interdimensional, I don't know, fix-it man. And there's lots of chase scenes in it, lots of lots of weird plot disjunctions. We pass around from one world to another, and I generally found it interesting. At the same time, I have tons of Keith Laumer books. I just thought, I don't think I'm going to read much more Keith Laumer. This is not to criticize him so much, whereas all these other writers I sort of still want to stick with. I've got all these Keith Laumer books. Look at this. Most of them are cool because of these covers. It's very hard for me to get rid of them just because those covers are also cool. I'll remember the name. You guys will remember the name of the artist who did all these covers. It's not in here either. Sometimes in the back. Anyway, I'll get it to you. And I just decided I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to get rid of almost all of these and make those shells. They're Galactic Odyssey. He's supposed to have written some kind of Sheckley-esque stuff. One of our bathing buddies wrote me a couple months ago, I forget his name, and he said he was reading Keith Laumer and having a great time with him. I can see that. I can see having a lot of fun with Keith Laumer. I just don't know. It's just a little too much chase scenes and shooting scenes. Okay, stay safe. Sorry this went on too long. Check out Bob Johnson, because he's checking you out. I can promise you that. I'll put the link down below.